Are we on?
We're on.
We're on. How do you like that?
Yes.
And we are celebrating. I'm celebrating.
What are you celebrating?
I've got a cup of hot chocolate, and I'm drinking it because I know it's going to get much cooler.
Chocolate caliente.
Yes, absolutely. 20 degrees cooler tomorrow. Here's to a cool wave or whatever.
No doubt.
Yes.
It was. Well, Newark got to 98 today and hit a record. First of all, let's say hi. I'm Joe Cioffi, FiOS 1 News Long Island and FiOS 1 News New Jersey.
And I'm Joe Rao, FiOS 1 News Lower Hudson Valley, and it was also 96 today at LaGuardia Airport.
Right, 98 at Newark, which it was a record. The heat index at 5 o'clock, when I went on our 5 o'clock show, I believe was 108.
Wow.
That's
disgusting.
That's beyond disgusting.
Yes.
Today, I think, of all the days, was probably the absolute worst because there was no breeze, at least where the areas that I traveled today.
Yeah.
Not a breath of wind. It was like walking through a steam room.
Well, I did something very stupid this morning. I said at 10 o'clock, I looked out the window and said, I haven't cut the grass in about 10 days, and it was really getting kind of long.
And you picked today to do it?
And I decided, well, let me just do as much as I can, and I only was able to do half.
I resolved the cutting the grass problem easily. I turned the sprinklers off 2 weeks ago, so now it's just burned to a crisp. So there's no grass to cut. All right, let's talk about. Let's get Florence. Let's take care of Hurricane Florence.
Let's take care of it. Let's get her out of here before
right.
she even has a chance
and
to get
then
in.
We can talk about the weekend weather because that's going to actually set the table for whatever may happen next week or may not happen.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of want to emphasize at this point, don't even bother to ask specific questions about where Florence is going to go and landfalls and all the rest of it, because the collective answer is we don't know the answer to that question. We don't even know yet if it's going to make landfall. I think the way I'm looking at it, Joe, is there's a couple of hurdles I want to see it basically jump. First off, hurdle number 1, and we'll bring it up on the satellite picture.
Okay.
And that's what's happened when yesterday we were sitting here with a Cat 4, and
it's weakened now to a Cat 1.
And that is correct.
Yeah.
And we have I have the latest enhanced loop, and you can see it looks totally different from yesterday, just in terms of the structure. It's stretched out northeast, southwest, and that's you can actually see the cloud tops just getting blown away to the northeast. So this is some pretty strong shear that occurred. It took it down from a Category 4 to top winds 130 to Category 1, top winds of 80.
I mean, if you were with us 24 hours ago, we had basically a view of what could be a classic textbook strong hurricane. We had the outflow bands. We had a beautiful eye at the center, and it looked every bit like a very, very significant, very major hurricane. And now in just 24 hours, as Joe just mentioned, that shear has really did a number on it, and you could see how it just, as Joe mentioned, just stretched out, almost a little bit like silly putty.
The core, to me, looks intact. So that is important. It's kind of hard to see the center earlier today. You could actually see that the center had become at least partially exposed.
Mm-hmm.
Now it looks like that there's been blow up of thunderstorms here over where you might maybe that spot there, maybe where the center is. It's kind of hard to tell, but it might be a sign that at the very least that the shear has peaked and is going to start to slowly ease during tonight and during the day tomorrow. This is what the Hurricane Center is forecasting to happen for the shear to ease. But I want to see it do that, okay?
Okay.
And that's hurdle number 1. And by the way, here's on the wider view, very impressive upper low well to the west, running from the north of the Dominican Republic out into the Atlantic. This is this big upper low that's creating, basically hostile wind conditions. And there's Florence. If you look close on the first couple of spins here of the loop, you can actually almost see the center kind of pops out in the corner there, and then just gets back in underneath some of the convection, and you get this burst that happens. So the strength is hurdle number 1. Hurdle number 2 for me is 60 degrees west, and that's going to happen probably sometime early Monday morning.
Mm-hmm.
If it crosses 60 degrees west, that is going to indicate to me that it's going to miss that trough out in the Atlantic and not recurve, which is the second hurdle.
And then it's...
Then the third hurdle
Yeah.
that I want to see it hit, that would be, does it make it to 30 degrees north before it gets to 70 west or after it gets to 70 west?
okay.
All right? Because I think if it makes it to 30 north or south of 30 north when it gets to 70, I think that increases the threat for the East Coast. If it's north of 30 degrees north when it gets to 70, it makes it, it doesn't eliminate the risk by any means, but it makes it maybe a little more tenuous
Right.
in that you start to put it in the equation that maybe it might, hook up and stay just offshore.
Well, I got to tell you though, looking at some of the models today, the GFS model is taking the storm on a track that literally grazes the coastlines of New Jersey and Long Island, and then for
The center does. The center of the hurricane.
the center does, and then for reasons that I guess only the GFS knows, it suddenly takes the storm and plunges it straight south back toward Florida.
Yeah,
in the
that's,
later on.
I a couple of people had asked me about that, and I said, we haven't even resolved it getting past 60 degrees west yet. So let's get it. Let's see what happens over the weekend, and we'll deal with those issues when we get closer.
Right.
It's all as a result of the fact that the steering is going to be so weak in the east with this upper high that eventually that steering just basically collapses. All three models, by the way, show some concept of. I got the Canadian up first. They all show some concept of that. They're not all exactly the same, but they kind of all have their different spots as to where they want to take it. For example, the Canadian wants to send it into North Carolina, and then it kind of stalls it there inland and then brings it back to the coastline.
Right.
The European is not that different, except that it's further north, but it has the same concept. Also has a much more formidable looking storm. Where it brings it right into coastal North Carolina, just off the Delaware coast, and then leaves it there for 48 hours.
Right.
Who knows?
Right.
The number is, there haven't been that many storms over the years that have actually done this. And then you got the GFS. I'm sorry, just real quick. Let's just bring the GFS just for comparison. By the way, the new one was about 1.5 degrees to the, much further to the right, well offshore.
Right.
Which is different. Well, that's after the loop. But at this point, it's further east than what it was on the day run. But we're going to be going with these back and forth hiccups. It just seems like though that the models are all getting a little closer. This one was the 12Z run, and that's when, as you said, it just kind of gets very close to the New Jersey coast, touches eastern Long Island, then drops southward, then loops around. It goes. That was hilarious when I saw it.
It looks like the inebriated track.
Yeah.
Literally, like it's drunk. It's just like wandering all over the place. But last week, this thing looked like, for all the world, all the models were kind of like sending it up through the central Atlantic on up toward Greenland, or at the very least possibly Newfoundland or whatever. And now it's pushed so far off to the west, more than it was last week. The trend has been, in general, to push it more and more to the west. So who knows, by the time we actually get to the event, or by the time we get to this time next week, we might actually be looking at a storm that is sweeping north and westward, maybe hitting the Carolinas, continuing on to, let's say, the Ohio Valley, and then just dying as a rainstorm. And hopefully that'll be what we're looking at, and not one of these situations where all of a sudden it decides to curve right up along the Atlantic coast and bring us some problems.
You got me thinking about that last night, and I remembered from last year. I suddenly had like a quick flash memory back with Hurricane Irma. When it first appeared on the long range, it actually sent it up to like Iceland.
Right.
Then it was to Greenland. Then it was to Newfoundland, then Nova Scotia, then New York City, then Chesapeake Bay, on and on and on and on, until ultimately what happened, it went straight across the South Atlantic, north of the Dominican Republic, north of Cuba. So that, these model adjustments happen all the time.
Right.
The key, nothing's changed since yesterday.
And we still have 7 days.
And we still have 7 days
to for it to waffle, so to speak, and some wiggle room. And while it looks like right now that there may be a close call for our neck of the woods, 7 days from now it may not be such a close call.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Nothing's changed in terms of what we're watching on the upper air. There's your trough coming off off of the Canadian Maritimes. It misses that. All the models show it missing that trough.
Right.
And then the ridge builds, cradles around it, and then after that, that's where that's where it's going to become even more difficult in terms of figuring out what's going to happen.
And what we've been seeing all summer.
If it gets to that point, I want to emphasize we don't know that it is. Okay,
right.
just to be clear.
What we've been seeing all summer too with these big ridges is that they blow up, they expand, they inflate to a greater degree with the passage of time than what the longer range models originally had said. So if that ridge in the northeast expands even more so, that may be the key to helping to suppress or shunt Florence more to our south. And again, we'll see.
Well, let's talk about now that this front is through. So it kind of gets hung up, and that high to the north is trying to push down. It looks like it has some success in that it maybe keeps rain out of here over the weekend, although there might be a little bit running around tomorrow in some places and into Saturday morning. But that the remnants of Gordon with the low to the west bring some showers here on Monday. So that maybe much of the time this weekend, it may not be picture perfect. There'll probably going to be a lot of clouds around. We're going to have a nice fresh northeast wind, which I'm really liking, and it'll be cool. I think Sunday, in a lot of places, it might not even get out of the 60s.
Well, the normal high temperature for the Hudson Valley, the lower Hudson Valley, at this time of the year is 77, and what we're pegging is maybe upper 60s and lower 70s.
Well, I went for that for Long Island and New Jersey as well.
Yeah.
You know, the gradient from the northeast is not too shabby, and then of course you've got this front comes back up as a warm front, but at the same time the upper ridge is building, so that system to the west of us falls apart, and I think we're going to start to turn warm and humid again Tuesday and Wednesday.
Right.
And if this becomes a threat, actually, I can envision Wednesday being a mostly sunny day.
Right.
Where you get the subsidence going on around it, and it winds up being like really warm and gets to the mid and upper 80s, or even near 90 with a deep blue tropical sky.
Yeah.
If we get to that point, but obviously the models are they're all they're all on the same page. Maybe they're on different parts of the page, but they're on the same page.
Right.
We've got tomorrow. Let's get through. Let's see what these hurdles, how Florence handles these hurdles. If it doesn't recurve, we're going to be sitting here on Monday, and then we're going to be able to decipher, just how serious a situation we're going to have or not have.
I'll know what's going to happen because I'll be able on Tuesday. I'm going to use the beadometer, and the beadometer is the beads of sweat that are forming on both your forehead and my forehead come Tuesday evening, based upon the latest computer models.
Let's hope that it finds a way to get out or stay offshore.
Yeah.
This is not something you want to happen. I don't care how much of a weather enthusiast you are. You really
do you really want to see a repeat of Irene or of Sandy? That's the question.
Yeah. So better it doesn't happen. So
we had Gloria in '85. We had actually Eastern Long Island had Bob in '91. And then we had to actually wait all the way until then it was Floyd in '99. In fact, one of the people who work here reminded me of that, and that was a bad storm. It's too early. I don't want to deal with this. We've only had like 6 years since Sandy.
Yeah, I know.
So it's
Matt Schilling, will it strengthen to a Cat 4 again? I think it's possible. The intensity models do strengthen it back, but I think it's important to see how it comes out of this whole shearing thing that it's going through.
Right, and the Hurricane Center does have it on Tuesday up to a Cat 3, but it wouldn't surprise me if it did get back to a Cat 4.
Okay, you don't want to see a number of you hoping that it doesn't that nothing happens, which is good. Just trying to get.
Yeah, there are some people out there who are masochists. Come on, bring it in. Come on, I want it.
Right down to which highway he wants.
Yeah, exactly.
Stop. Exactly. You can't, Anthony Archibald. You can't I can't give you a percentage. I can't lay you odds. It's not a horse race when you got an 8-5 horse running, or a 1-5. You just you can't really look at it that way.
It's like in the movie Apollo 13 when Richard Nixon supposedly asked the people at Mission Control, "What are the odds of bringing back the astronauts after the explosion?"
Exactly.
You can't put. This is not Las Vegas.
Bob Wilson, if anybody brings acorns up this year, I am not going to be happy. They fall every year off oak trees. They're gathered by squirrels every year. That's the way that works. God and nature kind of worked it out that way so they wouldn't have to go to supermarkets. Next full moon. Well, Barbara Bender, it is a new moon on the 9th, 10th, right?
Right.
And the peak tides are probably going to be on the 12th, 13th.
11, 12.
11, 12, okay.
Yeah.
So that is a question. And by the way, that is a point of concern that I do want to just bring up, is the fact that this is going to be something that will not be coming up from the south or the south-southwest. It is going to be coming up from the southeast.
Right.
So it's going to be really important. It's going to be tidal concerns are going to loom large.
Oh, there's no question.
If this is good, if this winds up being a threat.
No question about that. And since 9/11, the anniversary of 9/11 is coming up on Tuesday. I want to point out that, and not too many people are aware of this, I actually did a report on the 10th anniversary about this. There was a hurricane, Hurricane Erin, that was moving in from the south and east toward the New York metropolitan area. And had that system continued, come 9/11, we could have had hurricane warnings and full-scale hurricane conditions.
I remember, yes, you're right. I just missed that. I remember that.
And guess what? We had this cold front come on through. We had thunderstorms the night before, just like what we had now. And the front just pushed on to the south and east, pushed Erin out away from our area, and brought in those beautiful blue skies that we all awoken to on that fateful morning in 2001, September 11th. And I remember the night before, Joe, this is on September the 10th, telling everybody, oh, don't worry about Erin. Don't worry about it at all. It's not going to come this way. Here's a cold front, and when you wake up tomorrow morning, it's going to be a glorious day, blue sky, bright sunshine, and we all know what happened after that.
Yeah.
And I actually wish now that we did have the hurricane.
It might have changed things.
Yeah.
George Latanzi, what are your thoughts with the GFS in general, not just for the storm? Rely on it or not really? Look, when you use a tool, whatever tool it is, just in general, if you use any tool and you use it for a while, if it's a tool that's got a slight defect and you don't necessarily want to replace it, you sort of figure out what the defect is and you work around it. Well, that's kind of how we use, the approach to weather models. They all have deficiencies, and we kind of know what those deficiencies are, especially in the longer range. So, when we see something, when we look at something where there's a literal print of a storm at a point, whatever that point is, we already know in our heads that it's a reasonably high probability that it's not going to be there. It's more important to just kind of recognize what the overall pattern is,
right?
Because then you can make good guesses as to where a storm may actually wind up,
right?
And we've been doing that all along for the last 5 days,
right. Just
saying, well, it's got it at point A, but look at the upper air. That would argue that maybe it'll be at point B or point
right.
C.
Right.
So that we do rely on it. And then there are times when we discount it, and there are times when we look at it with more importance. And then the UCMED is brought up as well. Model has the storm to the south. The UCMED has its moments. Sometimes in the wintertime especially, it tends to have its moments where it hits home runs.
Yeah.
So I never want to discount what the UCMED does.
And what I just said a few minutes ago about trends. It would not surprise me if not tonight, maybe tomorrow's 12Z GFS run brings the storm literally right along the coast from the Delmarva, maybe right over New York City, and maybe inland into Connecticut and southern New England, because that's been the trend of this over the last week or so, is to slowly push the overall path more and more to the west,
right.
And more in line, I might add, with what the European and the Canadian models have been saying, because they've been bringing the storm.
Well, and don't discount that you could still wind up with that, because if you've got this sheared system now, there's going to be a tendency for it. You pointed out last night, and correctly so, that it looked like there was like this north-northwest movement, and the Hurricane
right.
Center acknowledged that on their 11 o'clock advisory,
right.
And they pointed out, as we were discussing, the fact that when the storm reached its peak intensity, it was so deep. In other words, it went so high up in the atmosphere, right. That the steering was coming from that level, which was trying to pull it poleward.
Right.
Much
right.
More northerly
As
component.
You've been pointing out,
right.
That's what you want, that the upper level.
So all we do is point things out to each other.
other.
But the weaker sheared storm is shallow or shallower is going to want to move more with that low-level flow, which is more westerly. If it develops a mostly westerly motion, that might prevent it from gaining latitude.
Right.
And in which case, then maybe you could wind up with something that's south of 30 north.
Right.
And maybe it winds up going more toward the southeast coast. Maybe not all the way down the southeast coast, but maybe the Carolinas. I don't think you can rule that out either.
Right.
So, again, a lot of variables here. I think, Joe, the bottom line is right now I'm not going to get concerned. I'm not going to ratchet up my level of concern until it gets left of 60. I want it to go left of 60. That happens sometime late Sunday night, probably early Monday morning. If that happens, then we'll be having a different conversation come Monday.
Right. And we'll see.
I think that's fair.
We'll see. Yeah, I agree with you. And it is a week away. It is a tropical system. Trying to predict where a tropical system is going to go on some of these models is like. So I see it. Actually, I feel good about it right now that it's coming. It's bringing this thing right literally up to us because you know as well as I, when we were much younger, and in this business, we would see something like this, and we'd start getting real excited. Oh, it's bringing it up to New York.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
And then what? And but I mean, what ultimately happened after a few days? Either the thing would go this way or that way.
Yeah.
It never came up that track.
I've had enough of my fill with winter storms. I can't. I no more. Well, I want to go.
Winter storms, summer storms, hurricanes,
whatever they are.
Whatever they are.
Matt Schilling, which model had the Sandy correct? The Euro, and I'm trying to rack my brains.
The Euro had Sandy 6 days in advance. They were the one and only. It was the one and only model that 6 days in advance alluded to that unusual track north and then northwest into New Jersey. And I did on my other where I used to work. I actually went on the air that night and I said, if this verifies, and I showed that track, if this verifies, we're going to be in big trouble because the Hurricane Center, if you remember, their track was taking it north and then kind of trending it away from the coastline. Right. And a lot of people.
The upper air scenario here is different.
Yes,
it is.
Absolutely.
It is.
Well, we had a block.
Different.
We had a major block over northern northeastern North America.
Big cutoff low in the Tennessee Valley.
Right.
It was all wrapped up, and it just basically rotated around it.
Right. It just couldn't go. It couldn't go the standard.
This is all ridge.
Right.
For the most part.
Right.
All right. Let me just say really quick. Hi to Joe Alloy. Hi to William Uber. Hi to Mike Panici, my buddy who I saw earlier, but I forgot to say hi, so I'm saying hi now because we're going to get ready to say goodbye.
Right.
And I think we should. So Fios 1 News, Long Island and New Jersey for me.
Fios 1 News, Lower Hudson Valley for me, and
Fitzgerald and Banson in the morning.
his
Brittany Borer is by herself because Dear Addison is taking the day off.
Is he allowed to do that?
What's that?
Take a day off.
I'm sure he's got a pile of laundry a mile high that he's got to do and dust his furniture when he shows up. When we Skype him in.
I'm just questioning that because tomorrow's pizza day here, so
yes.
So we get our pizza.
And you and I will be here tomorrow evening.
Well,
once again, just to emphasize, folks, you can't really answer any questions in terms of any specifics at this point. We're really, we really don't know very much about where this is going to be 6 days from now, 7 days from now. Let's wait. We'll wait through. We'll watch it together. We'll wait through the weekend. If it's west of 60 and moving westward, then we'll start to we'll ratchet up the level of concern come Monday. In the meantime, enjoy the fact that you've got dew points that are not going to be in the 70s and temperatures that are going to be in the 70s and even in the 60s on Sunday for highs.
Absolutely.
That's what you think about now and enjoy that.
And you can open the windows, turn off the air conditioner. Man, Joe, I had an electric bill last month.
Did I tell you what happened with mine? Remember I told you I didn't open it?
Right.
Because it comes off and I was just afraid to open it to see. As it turned out, it was the lowest electric 2-month July bill I ever had.
Really?
And, I don't have kids in the house anymore. Mine are all grown and gone.
Right. So,
and I had daughters. So, this is where, and I suddenly started to recall the moments when someone would wash one item of clothing in the washing machine at a time. Okay? lights left on.
Yeah.
Whatever else they were using, electrical, that they wouldn't shut off. And I didn't ever realize how much it must have added up, but it sure did, because my bill was it was one of the lowest June, July bills I ever had. And I ran my pool filter, 12 to 15 hours a day. I have, the air conditioning, central air, that was running, and on the really hot days it was running a lot. I really thought I was going to have like a 4-digit bill, and it wasn't, and I was like, thank you.
Well, mine wasn't a 4-digit bill, but mine was roughly 3 times higher for the last month than any other bill I've had in the 16 some odd years I've lived.
Yeah.
So I want that air conditioning from outside.
I totally agree. All right, folks, have a great night. Be well, and we will see you on Friday.
We'll be back.